like Jeremy mentioned, today's focus is on supporting a healthy immune system. And so what that encompasses, what we're going to tackle as we go through the different recipes are food safety. We're going to look at gut health. And sometimes when you're not feeling well, that could also affect what you eat. So we're going to look at a recipe that can be used when you're having symptoms like nausea. So the first recipe that we're going to look at today is a pulled orange chicken avocado toast. And like I said, we're going to talk about food safety. So, with cancer and its treatment, many times it weakens the immune system, right? So your body isn't able to fight infection or fight bacteria, and that can actually lead to food poisoning. So it's really important to have food safety tips that start not only like when you're in the kitchen, but before, so when you're shopping, and also leftovers, and we're going to go over that as we look at today's recipe.
Perfect. So we're going to get right into it. We are using chicken. It's definitely good to cover chicken because we can cover some points on food safety, like Stephanie talked about. It's also good to talk about chicken because sometimes we overcook chicken, and especially I think with chicken breast, we're all culprits of that because maybe we're afraid that we're cooking it to the right internal temperature, right? So we try to overcook it, and especially with chicken breast, it can be very dry. So this technique is actually a great way to cook chicken breast. I actually like cooking chicken thighs usually because they are more moist. But chicken breast is a great cut to use as well. And if you do prefer using it, try this technique of poaching because it's going to keep it nice and juicy and really nice and moist. And it's a very simple way to cook the chicken as well. So what we're doing is we have a small pot. Anytime that we're using raw meat, especially if we're prepping it in any way, we want to make sure that there's no cross-contamination, right? We're avoiding it as much as possible. So I'm just putting this directly into the pot. So I actually don't even need a cutting board to prep. But typically in my kitchen, it's a recommendation for you guys as well, is have one cutting board dedicated just for your raw meats. Have another cutting board dedicated for pretty much everything else, your fruits and veg, if things that you don't have to worry about any sort of bacteria, and usually I color code it, so I have my white cutting board for everything else, and then I have my yellow cutting board for my raw meats and any sort of butchery that I need to do. That way it's, I don't switch it up and I can forget in the kitchen. Now how about chicken? Now this has changed, I think, probably over the last few years, the recommendation of washing your chicken, especially if it's whole chicken. So we'll just talk about it instead of asking. The recommendation now is actually not to wash your chicken in the sink because that can actually lead to spreading more bacteria around the kitchen.
Yeah.
You think of it splashing on your countertops, you're not even seeing it sometimes, and that is a very easy way to spread bacteria. So the recommendation now is you just go to cooking it. Okay, so for the poaching of the chicken, we have a small pot. I'm using one chicken breast. This actually makes quite a bit. This is enough. We're making these are small little toasts. The avocado toasts are the sexy food thing right now. Everyone's into avocado toast, so we're going to do a version of it. One chicken breast goes a long way. We don't really need much. So that goes into a pot, and we're going to cover it with liquid. Now, typically you poach, water is the very common technique, but why use water? We can use another liquid. We can make this a little more interesting, add some more flavor, right? So we're going to use a chicken stock, and if you buy chicken stock, just get a low sodium chicken stock. We make our own, so that's why it's a lot darker. We roast the bones ahead of time, and it's also a little gelatinous as well because of the bones. And we're putting this in cold. So even if you were using water, start off with cold water. Don't bring it up to temperature first. If we add the chicken breast to already boiling or already simmering water, it's gonna just seize up and it's become very tight and tough. Right, so we actually want to start off cold and bring everything up together. It's going to actually cook it a lot more evenly that way. So I have a little bit of chicken stock, and I'm going to add some orange juice as well. right? And you can also add any other herbs. You can add spices to this. I'm going to use some of the peel. Remember, wash everything really well. So you wash your orange really well. Some of the peel, that zest, is going to be super fragrant. So we're going to put this in there.
Yeah, so you just want to make sure that when you're picking your fruit or your vegetables that you're, that there's no browning or bruising. And if there's any, you always want to scrub it. And so things like with a thicker peel, like an orange, you'd want to scrub it with a fruit and vegetable scrubber. Again, to get any, there might be some dirt that you can't see. So just to be extra cautious, you'd want to do that.
Even if you're not using the zest, or even if it's a vegetable like an avocado where you would think, I'm not using the outside, why am I washing the outside? But think about when you cut through it, right? Now anything that's on the outside is going to be traveling to the middle. So that's why we wash and scrub it. So I've got a little bit of orange juice in there. We have our stock, garlic cloves. I just have them whole. That's going to go in there. And like I said, I didn't put this on there, but I had some thyme. You can throw some thyme in here as well. So this is sort of your poaching liquid. And you just want to make sure that it covers about an inch above the chicken breast. So everyone can see that? And now from cold, we bring it up to a boil. And once you start to see the bubbles, reduce the heat to medium, and you just want to simmer. You don't want to boil the liquid. If it boils, again, it's going to become really tough. The chicken breast is going to tighten up. So we just want it to simmer, and we're going to simmer that for about 15 minutes. Now, obviously, chicken breasts are different sizes. If you butterfly it, it's going to take less time. So the best way, and really the safest way, and only way to really tell the doneness of your chicken or any type of meat is to use a food thermometer. So this is one thing that we always recommend you have. This is a massive one. This is an electronic one. They do have the smaller ones as well. A culinary school, everyone has a food thermometer on them because you want to make sure that you're cooking it to the proper internal temperature. Okay, so this is done. So this was about 15 minutes. I tested it before, and we're going to let it rest here. And the rest of the liquid, the poaching liquid, my spoon got lost in there too. Well, we're going to just bring the poaching liquid, no cutlery, back to a boil, and we're going to let that simmer just until it reduces to half, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to use it to make a sauce, and you want it to just thicken up a bit, concentrate. So you can bring that back up to a boil, reduce it to half. With the chicken, you can let it rest for a couple minutes, but you don't want to leave it out for too long, right? Anything that's out at room temperature is sort of in the middle of what we call the danger zone.
Yeah.
This is when bacteria thrives, so we want to make sure we keep hot foods hot, cold foods cold. So this we're gonna get at it pretty much right away, and we're just using 2 forks. You can even use a knife, and you can see how easy this shreds. It's super moist, especially for chicken breasts. Like this is something where I always go to thighs because thighs are moist and a lot juicier, but chicken breast can be really tasty too. You just don't want to overdo it, right? So this shreds obviously really, really easily. And we're going to return this back to the liquid once it has reduced. So I'll give it a nice shred here. So pretty straightforward, right? Pretty simple. This takes a little bit longer. You don't have to do this, but I want to show you anyways because it is super easy. This is a great recipe. And we're going to be using our own flour. So we're using a spelt flour, nice whole grain flour. And I have a little bit of baking powder. You can use baking soda as well, just to help with leavening. And what I add is 3/4 of a cup for this recipe, and 1/2 cup of yogurt.
Yeah.
Just plain yogurt.
Yeah. So again, you just want to, whenever you're using yogurt, you want to make sure that you're looking at the best before date, right? And so buying foods that are, in the future, well in advance. And also if you're buying different types of flour, especially if your immune system is compromised or weakened, you want to try to buy the flours that are packaged. So not going to, let's say, a bulk barn or a place that sells things in bulk. And this is because, different people are opening them and closing them, and different hands are going inside. So you do want to make sure that anything that you're purchasing is packaged, and that goes for flours, nuts.
And I'm adding a little bit of fennel seed. You can add whatever flavor you want. You can add chopped herbs. You can add a little bit of chili flake if you like a little spicy. It's a great way to sort of customize it. And once it starts to come together, sort of crumbles like that, you can put it on to a cutting board, and you're just going to sort of work it into each other. So what I do is grab it from the bottom, lift up, and then push it back in. And you can do this a few times. It's very relaxing.
Mindful.
Very mindful, yes. A little bit more work than opening up the bread package, absolutely, but it's I think a little bit more rewarding as well. So you just keep working it into itself just until it starts to become tacky again. You can start to feel it sort of stick to your palm, and it should come together. So it's not perfect, it's not beautiful, but it's really tasty. So that's going to go on our hot griddle, and that'll bake it'll cook for about 2 minutes per side. That's all it takes.
You don't need to put oil or anything?
No oil, no. As long as it's hot enough, and I would go like a medium-high heat, then you're fine, absolutely. I'll show you what it looks like in a second. And I'm gonna switch over to this cutting board here. And the star of the avocado toast is obviously our avocado.
Yep.
Right? Like Stephanie said, wash it really well before you cut it. Now this has become infamous for being one of the leading causes of knife injuries in the kitchen lately. They call this avocado hand. So I'm going to show you the safe way to cut the avocado, especially when we're talking about food safety. Knife safety is very important, right? We don't want any injuries. Pretty much what you want to do is just have your hand out of the way as much as possible. So with the avocado, you're going to have the little stem at the top. Start there, remove that. That little pick can get into the way of the knife, and it completely divert it into a different direction. that little stem there. So take that off first. Instead of doing it in your hand, and I am guilty of this because I go through lots of avocados, and so I'll cut them right into my hand. That's when we have injuries, right? If I'm pushing this knife towards my hand, that can roll in any direction, really not safe. So just keep it flat on the cutting board, knife on top, hand on top, push it into the stone. You'll hit the stone, and that way you can't go anymore. And then you can just roll the avocado around until it matches to the other side. So everything is right on the cutting board, right? You give your twist, you open your avocado, and then this is part two. This is when most people get that knife in their hand again. As you're aiming for that pit, you're distracted, you got a drink in your hand, and not a good situation. Again, flat on the cutting board, knife in the pit, twist, and that comes out, right?
There you go.
It's really simple. You have your avocado, you still have your hand intact.
Yeah. Yeah, and then for any vegetables and fruit, again, you just want to make sure that you're not overly stocking them so that they're kind of getting like they rot kind of in your fridge or on the counter. So, you know, generally speaking, I mean, depends on how often you go through them, but I would say, you know, buy fruit and vegetable for the week, right? And then, you know, make sure that you wash everything. If it has a thick skin, like we mentioned, you really want to scrub it. You want to just make sure that you're washing everything. You don't need to use soap, right? Because sometimes that soap leaks into and then you taste it. So just water is good, but if it's a thicker skin, you want to use a vegetable or fruit scrub.
Perfect. Okay, so avocado is ready. Our pita, our little flatbread, is ready to go. So you can see how it looks. Really nice. And the yogurt keeps it super moist, right? So if you're afraid to make bread, this is a good way to ease into it. It's super easy, really, really simple. And like I said, the yogurt really keeps it nice and moist. We're gonna take some of the avocado here, and you can mash it up. Or put it on in slices. And again, this would be, I'm making enough, this would be like 2 servings as like a snack, right? So I'm using a lot of avocado there. Maybe I don't have to use as much.
It's healthy fats, right?
Oh. Okay, so avocado is on there. If you want to give it a little squeeze of lime on the avocado. And then that chicken, just super moist and juicy. Put that on top.
There you go.
And that's it. That's ready to go for a snack.
Yeah.
If you're maybe serving it to somebody else, maybe put something green on top of that. So we have some fresh mint.
Yeah.
And we'll just slice
There you
that
go.
and put it on top.
Yeah. And that's it.
Absolutely. First recipe, done.
Ooh.
All right.